The observation vessel hung in silent orbit above a pale blue world, Earth, as the humans called it. From its polished observation deck, the aliens watched, their multifaceted eyes tracing cities that flickered like constellations. To them, the humans below were little more than clever scavengers, predators of minor consequence, dangerous only when grouped in numbers or circumstance. Yet something peculiar stirred their interest tonight. The old human appeared in the clearing, alone, moving with deliberate slowness. Frail of body, bent with age, his hands shook faintly, not from fear, the aliens quickly noted, but from the rhythm of experience. Each step seemed measured, almost ceremonial, as if he were aware of unseen forces tracking him. The capture team descended in shadowless pods, silent as predators themselves, expecting resistance. But when the human noticed them, he did not flee, he did not raise a weapon. He merely tilted his head, regarding the descending shapes with a calm defiance that set the alien observers abuzz. "Curious," one clicked, the sound vibrating through the observation chamber. "He does not flee." The humans below did not understand fear in the same way as other creatures, the lead observer mused. They thought themselves small, fragile, yet something lingered in the old human's gaze, a spark of awareness that suggested he already knew the outcome, yet welcomed the confrontation. The capture unfolded with mechanical precision. The human was restrained in energy cuffs, devices designed to neutralize aggression. He remained unyielding, his posture upright, his eyes locked on the alien forms. Even as he was lifted into the vessel, he exuded an aura that seemed almost physical, pressing against the sterile metal of the corridors, challenging the alien's assumption of dominance. "Insignificant," another hissed, though the word lacked conviction. The laughter that followed was nervous, strained. They whispered among themselves, clicks and hums mingling with amusement. A frail creature, they believed, a predator without weapons. Yet something about his silent strength unsettled them, an anomaly, a variable their simulations had never predicted. He walked through the corridors with deliberate calm, the hum of the ship beneath him a backdrop to his silent defiance. Each step, each slight tilt of the head, radiated authority. The aliens, confident in their superiority, had never before felt the unsettling weight of presence from a being so small, so ostensibly powerless. The lead observer leaned closer to the observation glass, facets reflecting the human's unwavering gaze. "Curious," it whispered. As the human was guided toward the interrogation chamber, the vessel seemed to shiver, not from any external threat, but from the realization that the prey before them was no ordinary creature. He radiated a lethal intent without movement, a predator in form, yet apex in essence. And the aliens laughed again, quietly, underestimating the storm that even now gathered unseen, a force older and sharper than they could imagine. But somewhere, deep in their collective intuition, the thought flickered. This one, this human, he is not as he appears. The doors of the chamber closed behind him, metal sliding with a hiss. Silence fell. The hunt had ended, but the awakening had only begun. The interrogation chamber was a cathedral of cold metal and sterile light, stretching impossibly high, the walls humming faintly with the ship's energy core. From their vantage points along the observation ledges, the aliens watched the old human with a mix of amusement, curiosity, and unspoken unease. He sat chained to the center platform, his body slight, frail, seemingly incapable of resistance, yet radiating an intangible presence that made the air itself feel taut. The lead alien stepped forward, voice reverberating like a chorus of resonant chords, each syllable carefully modulated to impress authority. "Behold," it intoned, and the chamber walls shimmered as projected hollows displayed the ruins of worlds, cities flattened beneath orbital bombardments, populations extinguished like sparks snuffed in darkness. These were the civilizations who dared oppose us. Their leaders thought themselves predators. The human's eyes did not shift from the projection, though faint creases of amusement curved the corners of his lips. The alien felt it immediately. The reaction was not fear. It was a quiet, internal acknowledgement, a subtle smirk that hinted he cataloged every detail with methodical precision. Each image of conquest, each statistic of death and suffering, was filed by the human in his mind, weighed against some unseen scale, stored for future calculus. A second alien clicked, incredulous. He does not recoil, does not falter. This is unacceptable. Perhaps he does not comprehend, the first whispered, though the words lacked conviction. He is small, frail, yet his presence... The sound trailed into silence as all eyes, facets glinting in the white light, returned to the human. The observers felt the shift, subtle but undeniable. He was asserting dominance not through aggression, but through calm, absolute awareness. The interrogation continued. Each alien, in turn, leaned close, projecting voices layered with mockery, weaving tales of their victories, their calculated annihilations, the merciless efficiency with which they dismantled every predator that dared to challenge them. The chamber seemed to vibrate under the weight of history, the victories of millennia displayed like a parade of trophies, intended to intimidate. Yet the human remained immovable, quiet, serene. His gaze swept the room, cataloging, observing, dissecting. Each whispered insult, each subtle threat, was absorbed and weighed. He responded with nothing more than the occasional tilt of his head, a brief contraction of his lips into a knowing smile, a small signal that was more devastating than any shouted threat. The aliens clicked and hummed amongst themselves. One asked. They debated, voices hushed in complex harmonics. Madness? Defiance? Strategy beyond our comprehension? They could not agree. Each conjecture, each theory, fell short of explanation. The human was a riddle, a variable unaccounted for in their centuries of simulation and conquest. The projections grew more intense, worlds torn asunder, civilizations erased in moments, families extinguished with mechanized precision. And still, the human did not react in the ways they anticipated. He did not cringe, did not plead, did not rage. He only observed. Each micro-expression, each heartbeat, catalogued with the kind of precision only a predator could muster. The irony was not lost on the aliens. Here was a predator unarmed, chained, and yet somehow commanding the room. One alien leaned closer to the projection, facets reflecting the images of fire and ruin. This should terrify him. Every system should make him bow. And yet, he is calm. He is... The sound trailed into an uncertain hum, a vibration that conveyed fascination, confusion, and something almost like fear. Another stepped forward, attempting to pierce the human stoicism. Tell us the limits of your species. The command was sharp, deliberate, meant to provoke. The human tilted his head slowly, gaze sweeping across each alien in turn. No words came, no hesitation, just the quiet, unyielding acknowledgement of their presence, as if saying, I see you, I understand you, but you do not yet understand me. The chamber's hum intensified, energy walls shimmered in anticipation, as if the vessel itself sensed the anomaly. For generations, the aliens had dominated predators, had studied threat hierarchies, had cataloged weakness and reaction, fear and dominance. Never had they encountered a creature that defied their models. Never had a prey exhibited the calm authority that unsettled them so profoundly. One whispered in clicks and hums. No flaw, the first responded. We misjudged. This is something else, something evolutionary. The human shifted slightly, not enough to break the chains, not enough to suggest challenge, yet the subtle motion communicated confidence. He radiated control, the kind that did not rely on physicality or weaponry, but on intellect, on foresight, on sheer unquantifiable presence. The aliens felt it like a ripple through the room, a predator's aura, not defined by strength, but by dominance of perception. The discussion among the aliens grew frantic, layered with clicks, hums, and whispers. Their hierarchy, the one principle they had trusted for millennia, was fraying.
They had faced empires, beasts, creatures designed by nature to destroy, and yet this human, so small, so frail, commanded more attention than any of them ever had. The audacity of his silence, the defiance in the absence of motion, was disarming. The chamber seemed to lean closer, as if the walls themselves waited for the human's reaction. Every projection, every echo of conquest was meant to intimidate. And yet he did not blink, did not flinch, did not even glance away from the stories of destruction. Instead, he absorbed, processed, and responded in ways the aliens could not quantify. The air grew thick with unspoken tension. The aliens' mockery had failed. Their tools of intimidation, their centuries of experience, their intricate understanding of predator psychology, all rendered meaningless by a single human. The absurdity of the situation was almost comedic. Almost. Then the human's gaze fixed upon the lead alien, and the room seemed to still. Every facet reflected in his eyes, and in that silence, the message was clear. I am neither afraid nor impressed. I understand more than you know. A low, vibrating hum ran through the observation deck. Even the projections seemed to shimmer, as if acknowledging the shift in authority. The aliens, confident in their superiority just moments before, now whispered uncertainly, their amusement replaced by something they had not felt in generations: doubt. The human, small and unarmed, chained yet untouchable in presence, had done what no prey should do. He had unsettled the predator hierarchy itself, and the aliens knew, even without words, that the room would never feel the same. The chamber hummed, silent, except for the low clicks of debate among the observers. The mockery had failed, the intimidation had failed, and somewhere in that calculated silence, the first flicker of fear, delicate, almost imperceptible, took root in the minds of the apex predators. The human's lips curved in a nearly imperceptible smile. The room waited, the vessel waited, and somewhere, deep in the algorithms and instincts of every observing alien, a question formed, a question they were not ready to answer. What is this creature capable of? And with that, the lights dimmed slightly, the chamber's energy walls pulsing in anticipation. The interrogation had begun, but the old human had already turned the game entirely on its head. The chamber fell into a silence so absolute it seemed to swallow even the faint hum of the vessel. The projections of conquered worlds, the echoes of civilizations reduced to ash, the carefully orchestrated mockeries, all hung suspended in the air, suddenly irrelevant. The old human shifted his posture, not with desperation or rebellion, but with the quiet inevitability of one who had walked through fire, storms, and wars that stretched beyond the comprehension of the observing species. His voice, when it came, was calm. It carried no tremor, no hint of weakness. Yet it was a sound that seemed to reverberate through every bone, every facet, every sensor in the room. The words struck the vessel like a pulse of energy, an unseen shockwave that rattled the sensors and made the aliens pause mid-gesture. They analyzed every inflection, every syllable, searching for hidden threats, for deception, for weakness. None existed. It was a statement, pure and absolute, a declaration of unassailable confidence. No plea, no challenge, no braggadocio, just truth, distilled into 2 sentences. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. The lead commander's multiple facets focused on the human, each reflecting a different calculation, each scanning for danger, for the subterfuge that must exist behind such calm. They had faced creatures whose violence could unmake entire moons, whose intellect rivaled starships' AI cores, and yet the weight of this human statement unsettled them more than any physical threat ever could. The old human's gaze swept the chamber, not with intimidation, but with comprehension, an awareness that penetrated beyond their projections, beyond their technology. It was as if he could perceive the intricacies of their hierarchy, the flaws in their assumptions, the gaps in their algorithms, all without speaking another word. Then he began to speak again, and the chamber felt the pull of stories older than memory, tales of Earth that unfolded in human cadence, carefully measured, impossible to interrupt. Our planet survived storms that rend continents, earthquakes that split mountains, and floods that drown civilizations, and yet we endure. Every catastrophe shapes us, sharpens us. Every conflict between us teaches cooperation, strategy, ingenuity,
The aliens listened in a mixture of fascination and creeping unease. Each anecdote painted humans not as mere predators, but as architects of adaptation, survivors of relentless challenge, and strategists capable of turning catastrophe into advantage. They described the human mind, honed over millennia, as a weapon more precise than the deadliest technology, a system evolved to anticipate, improvise, and prevail against seemingly insurmountable odds. Your fleets, your weapons, your dominion over countless systems, the human continued, are impressive. Yet they are predictable. They can be studied, countered, outmaneuvered. We do not rely on brute force alone. We exploit circumstance. We innovate in chaos. We endure where others break. We are not simply predators. The alien observers began to shift, subtle clicks and hums betraying their growing disquiet. Even the most confident among them felt a pulse of something foreign, uncertainty.
They whispered among themselves, debating in clicks and modulated hums. Could this be exaggeration, a psychological ploy? Or had they truly misjudged this species again and again in ways they had never allowed themselves to imagine? The calculations spiraled, sensors flared, projections flickered. Their systems seemed almost to tremble under the psychological gravity of his narrative. The humans' tales grew vivid, cinematic in their own right, and the chamber seemed to warp under their weight. He described humanity's rise from fragile beginnings, of tools forged from necessity, of alliances born in adversity, of knowledge painstakingly accumulated across centuries. Every story carried implicit lessons: observe, adapt, innovate, survive. Each anecdote reframed the aliens' perception, challenging the very foundation of their understanding of strength and predation. One alien leaned closer to its companion, facets reflecting the human's unbroken gaze. He is cataloging us as we do him," it murmured. "Yes," the other replied, though the sound was a shudder. "He does not merely endure our intimidation, he anticipates it. He commands the chamber without movement, without threat." The vessel itself seemed to pulse with the human's words. The low hum in the walls grew sharper, almost sentient, as if acknowledging a force it had never encountered. Human ingenuity, human resilience, human apex presence. The old human continued, unfazed by their shifting attention, weaving stories that illustrated the same principle in countless forms: nature, society, intellect, and survival, all converging on the truth that humans were more than clever hunters. They were apex predators, not through dominion over others, but through adaptation, foresight, and the ability to survive what others could not. The alien commander tried to regain composure, projecting authority through clicks, hums, and the resonant vibration of its many vocal notes. "You overestimate yourselves." The old human's gaze did not waver. "Significance?" he asked, quiet, deliberate. "Perhaps in your estimation. But significance is not measured in fleets or territory. It is measured in survival, in resilience, in the capacity to endure what the cosmos itself would deem insurmountable. That is our measure." A ripple of unease passed through the alien observers. Their amusement, which had once been confident, bright, almost condescending, now faded into hesitation. The old human's calm certainty exposed their arrogance, revealing gaps in their assumptions, flaws in their hierarchy that had never been challenged. For the first time in generations, they realized they had underestimated the very species they sought to dominate. Even minor movements among the aliens betrayed their anxiety. Sensors adjusted, ledges clicked as commanders repositioned themselves, whispers and clicks overlapping in a chaotic symphony of doubt. The human, still chained, still unarmed, had shifted the entire dynamic of power in the room. He leaned slightly forward, eyes never leaving the lead commander. "Do not mistake what you call dominance for supremacy. You control fleets, you command technology, you instill fear. Yet you cannot predict us. You cannot contain us." The words hung like sharpened beams in the sterile air, cutting through centuries of interstellar arrogance. A silence followed, absolute and total, broken only by the ship's low, resonant hum. The aliens could feel the recalibration of their instincts, the subtle shift in perception. Humans were no longer merely prey or nuisance. They were apex predators in every sense that mattered. The lead alien clicked, a vibration of disbelief and fascination. The old human smile was small, almost imperceptible, yet it carried a weight far beyond its size. It was the smile of one who had survived impossible odds, who had faced extinction countless times, and emerged stronger each time. It was a calm, calculated expression, the kind that radiated certainty, inevitability. The vessel seemed to tremble, or perhaps it was the perception of those aboard, as if the laws they had long observed, the rules of predator and prey, dominance and submission, were bending around the quiet force of a single human. Every projection, every plan, every assumption they had relied upon now seemed fragile, inadequate, uncertain. And in that moment, the old human leaned back slightly, letting the weight of his presence fill the chamber. The aliens, for all their experience, all their technology, all their centuries of conquest, understood a terrifying truth. They had encountered a force they could neither predict nor control. The chamber lights dimmed subtly, casting long, angular shadows that seemed to lean toward the human, as if the room itself acknowledged his supremacy. The aliens' amusement had vanished. Their confidence wavered. Their hierarchy, long unchallenged, trembled in the silence following his words. And the final thought echoed, unspoken but undeniable. Humanity was not merely a participant in the cosmic game. Humanity was the apex. A ripple of clicks and whispers ran through the alien observers. The old human's gaze did not shift. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the stars in orbit continued their silent vigil. The revelation had been delivered. The hierarchy had been challenged. And yet the human, calm and deliberate, waited. He was not yet finished. The aliens felt it, the pull of inevitability, the awareness that what they had dismissed as small, frail, and inconsequential might yet redefine the cosmos. The chamber hummed with the quiet energy of this awakening. The prey had become something more. The apex predator had spoken. And somewhere deep within the vessel, systems and instincts alike seemed to pause, sensing the shift, sensing the storm that had already begun, though it had yet to be unleashed. The chamber had transformed. Where once it had echoed with intimidation and mockery, it now pulsed with challenge and calculation. The aliens had grown curious. Some might have called it hubris, but curiosity mixed with lingering superiority had guided them to a single conclusion. The old human must be tested, not through threat alone, not through words or projection, but through the crucible of orchestrated trials. The first test unfolded in the simulation bay, a sprawling lattice of shifting platforms, invisible energy barriers, and holographic hazards. The human was released at its edge, unarmed, chained only at the wrists. The chamber pulsed with anticipation as the alien observers projected dangers that no human had ever faced. Simulated gravitational collapses, walls of fire that flickered with photonic heat, torrents of simulated water that would crush even the most resilient species. Each trial was designed to break mind, body, and spirit. Yet the human moved with a deliberate grace, as if the chaos before him were a map he had already read. He paused before a collapsing bridge, measuring angles, weight, and timing. He leapt, landing with a soft thud that carried no panic, no haste. The aliens hummed in surprise. Calculations had predicted failure. His frail body should have crumpled, his reflexes lagged, but instead he navigated the hazards with uncanny precision. Every trap, every challenge revealed patterns the aliens had never predicted. Algorithms designed to anticipate motion, to exploit instinct, failed. The human improvised. He rolled where prediction demanded step, ducked where projection expected leap, leveraged objects in ways the observer's simulations had never accounted for. He adapted in real time, calculating risk and outcome with a fluid intelligence that seemed almost preternatural. "Remarkable," one alien clicked, facets glinting in disbelief. "His behavior is unpredictable, yet not random." "Impossible," another hummed. "We have modeled every scenario, every potential variable." The next trial escalated. Holographic predators designed to mimic the deadliest species the aliens had ever subdued lunged, clawed, and snapped. The human faced them without hesitation. He observed their patterns, noticed their pauses, and maneuvered with precision, turning their own simulated aggression into misdirection. The alien observers whispered, a chorus of clicks and vibration.
noting how the human exploited predictability, improvising strategies that required intellect, intuition, and a fearlessness that defied reason. Hours passed, days perhaps, though the human seemed impervious to fatigue. In every challenge, his calm deliberation remained unshaken. Even when the obstacles grew lethal in both scale and complexity, he approached them methodically, weighing choices, calculating consequences, and acting decisively. The aliens' amusement began to falter, replaced by fascination. Then dread.
Each success shattered the assumptions they had built over centuries of studying predator hierarchies. This was no ordinary creature, no mere prey capable of outlasting in numbers or brute force. This was something different, something that combined instinct with intellect, risk with foresight, adaptation with ingenuity. "Observe," one of the senior commanders clicked, gesturing toward a complex simulation, a collapsing corridor, shifting energy grids, and a projection of a predator faster than any species in their database. The human analyzed, hesitated only a heartbeat, and then moved. He ducked, vaulted, spun, and used a falling panel as leverage to vault over the predator, landing exactly where predictions suggested he would fail. The observer's sensors recalculated, whirring in confusion. He had created a pattern within chaos, one they could not anticipate, could not replicate. "His mind," whispered another, facets quivering. "It is evolution beyond comprehension." By mid-cycle, the chamber had become a theater of human ingenuity. Every test the aliens devised, every deadly obstacle, every scenario meant to break him only revealed new depths. He adapted faster than prediction, calculated beyond projection, and exploited weaknesses the aliens had assumed were invulnerable. Even the most subtle gestures, how he shifted weight, how he timed breath, became clues to his mastery. The observers began recording, not as predators assessing prey, but as students witnessing genius unfold. And yet, he never acted recklessly. Every motion, every choice was measured. He carried the weight of centuries of survival in each step, each glance, each subtle adjustment to his environment. The aliens began to murmur among themselves. Brilliance, adaptation, calculated cunning. They could feel their definitions of predator bending under the weight of his presence. Simulations grew more extreme. Environmental catastrophes, projected civilizations collapsing, predatory swarms designed to overwhelm every sense. Each one was navigated with ease. The human's mind seemed to operate on multiple planes simultaneously, balancing instinct, strategy, improvisation, and foresight in a harmony that defied analysis. The observers watched, first in disbelief, then awe, and finally with a quiet, creeping terror. They had anticipated struggle, failure, hesitation. None had occurred. Every failure predicted by algorithms had been turned into success by his improvisation. Every lethal scenario had been converted into controlled opportunity. He moved like a predator of legend, one who had evolved beyond the constraints of ordinary biology, beyond the limits of weaponry, beyond the expected definitions of apex hierarchy. "We are," whispered one. "We are being cataloged," another replied, facets trembling. The human did not pause for triumph. He did not celebrate.
Each trial was met with silent analysis, with methodical calculation, with the quiet, unshakable certainty of one who understood both the stakes and the larger game. By the end of the cycle, the aliens realized something that caused a palpable shiver through the observation deck. This human, frail, chained, unarmed, was a symbol of evolutionary perfection, not through strength or technology, but through intellect, adaptability, and indomitable will. He was a creature who thrived where others perished, who turned catastrophe into advantage, who leveraged every weakness, his own and others, to emerge unbroken. Even the most skeptical commanders acknowledged it, silently, reluctantly. The very notion of apex hierarchy, the system that had guided conquest for centuries, had been called into question. The human's potential, once dismissed as minor or inconsequential, now gleamed with terrifying clarity. The final simulation approached, designed to overwhelm all 5 senses simultaneously: blinding lights, deafening resonance, temperature shifts, spatial distortion, and multiple predator swarms converging. The human entered the chamber calmly. His gaze swept the environment, taking in every nuance, every anomaly. He stepped forward, moved with precision, improvised instinctively, and navigated the trial with an elegance that seemed almost ceremonial.
The alien observers were frozen, facets reflecting disbelief, awe, and terror in equal measure. At the conclusion, the human stood unscathed, chains rattling softly, body intact, mind untamed. The chamber, designed to break him, had instead revealed the full spectrum of human capability: instinct refined by intellect, improvisation honed by experience, foresight sharpened by survival. The observers whispered in disbelief, clicks vibrating through the chamber. Humanity, this single human, was beyond any calculation, beyond any prediction, beyond their models. A final low hum resonated through the observation deck. It was not mechanical. It was not protocol. It was recognition, apex recognition. The frail human had turned trials into demonstration, traps into opportunities, chaos into order, and in doing so, had redefined what it meant to be a predator. The chamber went silent. Every alien present understood, without needing words. Humanity's apex potential could not be ignored, could not be predicted, could not be contained. The old human's brilliance radiated, quiet, unshakable, and utterly unconquerable. And the final thought rippled across every mind. The tests were meant to break him, but in truth, they had revealed the apex predator the universe had underestimated for too long. Outside the chamber, stars glittered in silence, unaware that a storm had awakened within humanity, a storm that no predator, no fleet, no algorithm could ever fully anticipate. The human's gaze swept the observers, calm and unwavering.
He had endured, he had mastered, and he had taught, in silence, a lesson they would not forget. The apex predator is not defined by weapons or numbers. It is defined by the mind, the will, and the unyielding capacity to survive against all odds. And the aliens understood, finally, that their hierarchy had been shattered, not by violence, but by the quiet, relentless brilliance of a single human. The War Council convened in the command chamber, a vast hall of cold obsidian metal and suspended energy conduits that pulsed with the rhythm of the ship's core. Alien commanders from every corner of the fleet assembled, facets gleaming in the ambient light, multiple limbs clicking against the platform as they took their seats. The air vibrated with tension, each click and hum resonating like the pulse of a predator poised to strike or be struck. Their strategy had always been elegant in its simplicity: dominate, conquer, subjugate. No planet had withstood them. No species had resisted long enough to challenge their calculated authority. They had studied prey, predicted responses, exploited weaknesses with precision. They were apex predators, undisputed, unchallenged. Or so they believed. But now, the presence of a single human, frail, chained, unarmed, threatened to unravel every calculation. The old human had been presented as a specimen, a curiosity to be catalogued and tested. Instead, he had exposed vulnerabilities in logic, in hierarchy, in confidence itself. Each commander knew it, though none wished to speak it aloud. He had not struck, yet he had revealed the fragility beneath their assumed dominance. The council chamber hummed with debate, a chorus of clicks, hums, and subtle vibrations. One commander's multifaceted eyes rotated nervously. Every calculation fails, it clicked. Every projection flawed. This human has exposed our errors. Another hissed, almost inaudibly. He is small in number. He should not matter. Yet, every scenario, every simulation we tested him against, he survived, adapted. The lead commander leaned forward, facets narrowing. We must act decisively, contain him. Containment is insufficient, whispered a subordinate. He does not rely on force. He commands perception. Authority radiates from him, without gesture, without weapons. The room vibrated with a strange mixture of fear and fascination. For the first time, these apex predators, creatures who had catalogued thousands of species, crushed hundreds of civilizations, felt the unsettling weight of being studied in turn.
The human, confined physically, projected a psychological dominance they had never encountered. They debated tactics, algorithms, fleets, and protocols, yet each plan faltered against the invisible force radiating from him. Every possible scenario, every contingency, seemed inadequate. The human had turned the battlefield inward, transforming perception into power, patience into leverage.
From their vantage points, the human remained still, his gaze sweeping the chamber, cataloging every micro-expression, every shift in posture, every tremor of doubt. He smiled slightly, not in arrogance, but in subtle acknowledgement of their realization. The apex predator, the one who had always assumed superiority, now recognized a force it could neither measure nor dominate. "Laughable," one commander finally whispered, facets glinting in dim light. And yet, even as the laughter rippled through the room, it faltered, fading into uneasy silence. The alien mind, honed for calculation and conquest, detected something that eluded measurement, the human's essence. Not force, not numbers, not fleets, but the quiet, unyielding certainty of a species honed for survival, adaptation, and strategy. The human's presence drew attention to the fragility of their confidence. Each commander felt it differently, a twitch in a sensor, a hesitation in thought, a shadow of doubt in instinct. The hierarchy they had long taken for granted trembled. For decades, perhaps centuries, they had ruled unquestioned. Now one human had disrupted it entirely. "Predator," one whispered to another, almost in awe. They had entered the chamber expecting compliance, resistance, or fear. Instead, they found a predator of a type they could not quantify, one who commanded respect and authority through presence alone. The confrontation was not physical, it was a battle of perception, a test of supremacy, a negotiation of dominance written in silence and intent. The old human shifted slightly, subtle enough to seem incidental, yet the effect was seismic. Commanders paused mid-click, facets rotating in unconscious mimicry of his movement. His gaze lingered on the lead commander, unwavering, analyzing, predicting, anticipating. He radiated authority not through aggression, but through quiet mastery. The lead commander, the apex of their hierarchy, felt the first prickling of fear. A human, small, frail, unarmed, had illuminated weaknesses the fleet had never accounted for. Control, order, dominance, they were all illusions in the presence of his calm, deliberate understanding. The human smiled again, almost imperceptibly, and the chamber seemed to respond. The air vibrated subtly, energy conduits humming with tension. The commanders laughed nervously at first, attempting to reclaim dominance through mockery, through the projection of ancient confidence. But the laughter faded as quickly as it began. The human's subtle smile was not one of subservience or humor, it was the quiet acknowledgement that they had glimpsed something profound, something beyond their comprehension. For a long moment the chamber was still. Every whisper, every click, every vibration was a silent admission. Humans were apex predators, not by weaponry, not by fleets, not by intimidation, but by essence. The subtlety of mind, the unshakable confidence, the capacity for adaptation and foresight, these were the true marks of supremacy. The human leaned back slightly in his restraints, eyes scanning the assembly, and every commander felt the weight of his presence pressing inward, a reminder that hierarchy could not always be enforced by force alone. Even in chains, even confined, he dominated perception. He had taught the captor the meaning of true power, presence, intellect, and unassailable certainty. The council murmured in clicks and vibrations, the room vibrating with unspoken consensus. Something fundamental had shifted. What they had believed to be predator and prey, captor and captive, conqueror and subjugated, had inverted in an instant. The apex predators recognized in silent awe that their model of supremacy had been disrupted, rewritten by a single human being. The human's gaze fell on the lead commander once more. Still, calm, deliberate, measured. No gesture of threat, no demand, yet every observer understood. He controlled the room. Authority did not come from claws, talons, weapons, or fleets. Authority radiated from intellect, experience, and a mastery of perception beyond prediction. The chamber fell silent, the hum of energy conduits and distant engines, the only reminder of the vessel's reality.
The aliens, for all their technology, all their history, all their calculations, were confronted with a truth they could not deny. Humans were apex predators, not by violence, but by essence. A final subtle click echoed through the chamber, a whisper of acknowledgement. The human's quiet smile lingered in every mind, a signal that they had seen what he allowed them to see, and nothing more. Outside the observation panes, the stars continued their indifferent vigil. Inside, a storm of awareness had begun, a recognition that humanity, small, fragile, and underestimated, wielded a supremacy beyond prediction. And the Council, the apex predators of 1,000 worlds, understood with chilling clarity. Their hierarchy, their dominance, their certainty had been challenged. And the challenge had been won, not with force, not with numbers, but with presence, intellect, and the quiet apex of a human predator. The laughter had faded. Silence reigned. And in that silence, a truth resonated. The apex predator need not roar to dominate. Sometimes it merely observes. The human's gaze glinted faintly in the chamber light. The confrontation was over, yet the war within perception had only begun. The War Council disbanded. The commanders departed the chamber, their exosuits clinking softly, energy conduits dimming in accordance with ship protocols. Yet the silence left behind was heavier than any fleet or armament. The old human remained chained at the center platform, frail in appearance, yet radiating an authority that made the very metal of the vessel seem differential.
The chamber hummed faintly, as if aware that something profound had occurred, something no simulation, no calculation, no weapon could erase. The aliens withdrew from the immediate vicinity, retreating to observation decks, data archives, and private chambers to record the encounter. Analysts scrolled through logs, reconstructions, and sensor feeds, each more meticulously detailed than the last. Every motion, every decision, every subtle gesture of the human was catalogued, studied, and debated. He had been their captive, their experiment, yet the data painted a truth that unsettled and awed them alike. Historians would later call him an anomaly, not merely a predator, they recorded, but a force that transcended conventional definitions. Where other species relied on strength, numbers, or raw aggression, the human relied on intellect, adaptability, foresight, and moral fortitude. Through these qualities, he had rewritten the parameters of dominance. No algorithm, no tactical simulation, no fleet of warships could fully anticipate the depth of his strategy or the subtlety of his power. Even in captivity, his presence commanded attention. The aliens felt it in quiet moments, a pause in speech, a faint glance, the tilt of a head. He required no weapon, no fleets, no overt demonstration of force. The human's supremacy was encoded in the certainty with which they approached life, in the resilience that carried them through catastrophe after catastrophe, in the creativity that allowed them to adapt, innovate, and overcome when all odds seemed stacked against them. The galaxy itself, vast, indifferent, ancient, had now witnessed something it had rarely seen, a species capable of transcending the simple predator-prey hierarchy, a species that had mastered adaptation and intellect to such an extent that even apex predators hesitated in their presence. The old human's quiet confidence became a ripple through the corridors of interstellar politics and history. His influence persisted beyond his physical chains, beyond the immediate reach of the vessel. Commanders confided to themselves privately that humans, though few in number, physically fragile, technologically primitive in certain respects, possessed a predatory efficiency unmatched by any species they had catalogued. Every decision, every action, carried weight and foresight. Even indirect observation of the human reshaped their understanding of strategy, risk, and hierarchy. The fleet's arrogance had been thoroughly dismantled, not through violent conquest, but through demonstration of human resilience and intellect. Each officer, each historian, each observer internalized the lesson. Fleets, weapons, and technology were formidable, but the human will was formidable in ways they had never anticipated. It was subtle, unyielding, and impossible to measure fully. It was survival, distilled into its purest, apex form. From their quarters, the aliens studied the human. He did not gloat, did not shout, did not challenge. He merely existed, calm and deliberate, a presence that demanded recognition. His gaze, sweeping across the observation points, suggested that he understood more than the observers realized. His intelligence was not only tactical, but caution, fascination, respect, and unease. A species they had once considered prey, insignificant, had demonstrated a mastery of survival and adaptation that rivaled or exceeded their own. The old humans' quiet defiance had forced them to recalibrate every assumption, every strategy, every hierarchy they had ever relied upon. The cinematic closure of the encounter was subtle yet absolute. No rebellion erupted, no fleet was destroyed, no chain was broken. Yet the aura of human supremacy lingered, a gravitational force around which perception, strategy, and understanding now orbited. Observers described it as a resonance, subtle, unyielding, and enduring. Humanity's influence had shifted the galaxy, not by violence, but by demonstrating a command of intellect, foresight, and resilience that even apex predators could not ignore. The old human sat in the center of the chamber, eyes tracing the departing commanders. He did not need to speak. Every movement, every calm breath, carried authority. The aliens, for all their technology and history, felt the weight of a truth they could not erase. Humans commanded the ultimate power, not by force, but by essence. In logs, historians wrote, "Though physically constrained, this human exemplifies the apex predator in its purest form, not by claws or fleets, but by intelligence, resilience, and unyielding will." Outside the vessel, the stars remained indifferent, yet the galaxy had changed. News of the encounter, filtered through fleets and analysts, would ripple outward over decades. The old human's example became a reference point, a benchmark for survival, adaptability, and supremacy. Wherever humans would go, their presence now carried weight, quiet, deliberate, unshakable. Commanders confessed in private that while they controlled fleets, weapons, and worlds, the humans controlled something far more potent, the ability to survive, to innovate, to dominate unpredictably. Their essence, subtle and enduring, could neither be destroyed nor fully predicted. This truth, once dismissed, now shaped every consideration of strategy, conquest, and interstellar hierarchy. The old human remained chained, yet the chains felt irrelevant. He had survived, mastered, and reshaped the perceptions of apex predators. His quiet assurance radiated across the vessel, across fleets, across observers. Survival was inevitable. Humanity's apex status was undeniable.
And in the dim light of the observation chamber, the final recognition settled. The galaxy had seen humanity not merely as a species, but as a force, unyielding, enduring, supreme. The predator hierarchy had been challenged, the apex recalibrated, and the lesson endured beyond the limits of a single vessel, beyond the knowledge of a single fleet. The aliens, once arrogant, once amused, now approached humanity with respect tempered by fear, fascination tempered by caution. They understood, finally, that supremacy is not measured by fleets or conquest alone, but by will, intellect, and the capacity to survive and dominate against any odds. The chamber's hum faded into quiet. The human's presence remained, subtle yet absolute. Chains clinked faintly as he shifted, but they did not diminish him. Humanity's influence lingered in the air, a quiet, cinematic closure that required no victory cry, no physical demonstration. Presence alone had communicated supremacy, and in doing so, rewritten the galaxy's perception of apex life. And in that enduring quiet, the record was clear. Humans were apex predators, not by violence, not by numbers, but by essence, unshakable, enduring, and unforgettable. The galaxy would never forget.